Hi, my name is Abby Ilavari, and this video is about my Infm 635 final project for Dr. Bhaskaran. And the video is I'm gonna be talking about my project. We did the UML models, the challenges that I faced drawing out my models, and we also had another paper that we wrote about standard codes. We were to pick two different standard codes and write about it. My contents will be I'll be discussing the UML, what it's about, the narration of the message design process, use case, activity, sequence diagram, and HL7 defined. The challenges that I faced while I was drawing out my UML diagram using Visio, healthcare standard codes, which are read codes, ICD, and then my reference. About UML. UML is a standard language for specifying, visualizing, constructing, and documenting the artifacts of software systems. UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. UML was created by Object Management Group, known as OMG, and the UML 1.0 specification draft was proposed to the OMG in January of 1997. UML is different from other common program languages such as C++ and Java. Although UML is generally used to model software systems, it is not limited within the boundary. It is also used to model non-software systems as well. For example, the process flow in a manufacturing unit. The narration of the message design process in my diagrams was initially what I was trying to convey in all three of my UML models was to focus mainly on the appointment process and the referral to the pulmonologist's appointment. My aim was to show the patient's appointment interactions within the system, the flow of the appointment and the referral, and also the pulmonologist referral itself. For my use case design, my process was to identify what was involved in the process and how it will interact within the system. My sequence diagram message design process was, I first of all drew it out on a sheet of paper to identify the sequence of how the scenario was going on and what actually was conveying to me while I was reading it. And then lastly, the activity diagram design process for this model that was also drawing it out and mapping out the order the scenario happened from the initial appointment with the family doctor, the lab work that was requested by the family doctor, and the referral to the pulmonologist. For my use case activity sequence diagram in HL7 defined. You can see these are examples of how a use case diagram look for an appointment system. This is how the activity diagram looks. This is also how the sequence diagram look, and this is how the HL7 looks. So use case diagrams are used to gather the requirement of a system, including internal and external influences. These requirements are mostly designed requirements. When a system is analyzed to gather its functionalities, use cases are prepared and actors are identified. Activity diagrams are mainly used as a flow chart that consists of activities performed by the system. Activity diagrams are not exactly flow charts as they have some additional capabilities. These additional capabilities include branching, parallel flow, and swim lane. The purpose of the sequence diagram is to visualize the interactive behavior of the system. Visualizing the interaction is a difficult task. Hence, the solution is to use different types of models to capture the different aspects of the interactions. So health level 7, or HL7 as we know it, refers to a set of international standards for transfer of clinical and administrative data between software applications used by various healthcare providers. These standards focus on application layers, which is known as layer 7. The challenges that I faced while I was drawing out my UML diagrams were, so for my use case, I didn't initially know that a use case was for the interaction between the user and the activities they accomplish in an information system. I was trying to capture my whole scenario in my use case diagram. I was trying to just put all the story into this system, which is not the case. Other than that, I knew that a use case scenario, a use case diagram was for just the interaction between the user activity and the information system. Basically, what occur that would need an input in an information system. I would have saved a lot of time doing my diagram. Another issue I had with my sequence diagram was the activation bar. I wasn't using it correctly. I was basically putting bars on all the event that occurred. I initially had a solid activation bar connecting the pulmonologist with the receptionist and the patient during the visit with a pulmonologist, which is not correct because the receptionist was not in the room when the patient saw the pulmonologist. So really my solid activation bar should have been with the patient and the receptionist when the patient was making a same-day appointment. That was an event, and that should have had a solid bar together and combined together, attached together. Now, the patient's visit with the pulmonologist should have also had a solid bar together because that happened, together at the same time, and it should have been attached together. So that was the initial mistake that I made and the challenges until I later figured it out. Another issue I faced was how could I simplify the scenario in a short view to be captured in my diagram. I was trying to convey the message but not showing everything in the scenario in there, but also implying it in my diagram. For my activity diagram, my use case diagram was actually my guide to drawing out my activity diagram. I was unable to align my control flow in a straight line. I couldn't tell if it needed to be straight or if it was attached to the event, if that was okay. So I just basically tried to align them together in a straight line, but it was still kind of slanted, so I didn't know if that's okay. So that was one of the issues that I faced also. And for my activity diagram, I was only showing how an activation response, mainly from what happened from the result of him going to his family doctor, what happened next. So I was showing the effects of him going to his family doctor, which led to the referral to the pulmonologist, and then I documented what happened there. Lastly, I wasn't familiar with all the shapes, there. I only used what I was familiar with. So had it been that I was familiar with more shapes, I could have been able to elaborate more on my activity diagram in regards to this scenario. Lastly, the HL7 was very tough. I had a lot of challenges. I couldn't differentiate the entity, the roles, the role links. The shape also had like its own subset. So when you click or drag, whether it be in the act or the entity to the actual board, and you click on it, you still have to go into another screen to input what you're trying to put on your blocks, on your shapes. So that gave me a lot of issues because I didn't know what needed to be attached together, what, I know roles are probably the patient and the doctor, or, stuff like that. And I didn't know the role links needed to be attached to the role. And so I spent a lot of time trying to make that fit. And lastly, the issue I also had was selecting attributes. I think that I was only able to select properly for like the person, the patient, because I know a patient will have a telephone number, an address, a name, a date of birth, and besides the use of the class codes, the status code, or the mood code, I didn't know what other codes will apply with the physician. So moving on to healthcare standards. Brief about healthcare standards. In the late 1960s, the healthcare informatics standards was started. Two common medical coding classification systems are used. The International Classification of Diseases, which is the ICD, and the Current Procedure Terminology, which is the CPT. ICD is the standard international system of classifying mortality and morbidity status, and it is used by more than 100 countries. The exchange of labs, messages, data consent, and information system security, and electronic health record system were the first healthcare informatics standards that was actually developed through ASTM. Read codes and ICD. Read codes is a standard clinical terminology used to describe the well-being of the patient. They are coded thesaurus of clinical terms. Read codes are used mainly in a primary care setting. They are one of two direct predecessors of SNOMED CT. Read codes are essential and vital language for those in the healthcare fields, and it also guides professionals with a quick and easy communication stream to be able to understand patient inflictions for smoother and understandable documentation. The ONC has named SNOMED CT as the standard terminology for use in certified EHR system technology. And the code set is used to facilitate data exchange across disparate systems. Having a standard coding on classifying schemes promote clarity, and it's very beneficial to interoperability. SNOMED CT would not actually be in existence without the read codes, as we know. ICD codes are used in medical records as a language to organize, identify, and interpret records, to provide a common language throughout the world, so that the standard data could be shared the same way in hospitals' systems. ICD originated from John Grunt's London Bills of Mortality in the 17th century. and John Farr-Jacques Bertillon on the late 19th century produced the International Classification Cause of Death. There are two related classifications of diseases with the same title. In 1893, the International Statistic Institute adopted the first international list of codes, list of causes of death. When ICD was created in 1948, it was entrusted by the World Health, and they published the sixth version, ICD-6. That was the first time morbidity was incorporated. All healthcare facilities should make sure adequate training is provided and also ongoing training of staff members to ensure that these codes are used properly and according to laws and regulations and for billing accuracy. Additionally, the incorrect usage of these codes can create a medical billing error if they were used incorrectly, and and it can also put a patient at risk or the organization itself at risk. That is the end of my project, and this is the reference that I used for my project.